Hi there, welcome to Nonsense Whisky. My name's VinPF, and on today's episode we're going to be checking out some bourbon. Now this thing here I picked up maybe a year or so ago, almost 2 years ago in fact, and I picked it up at the Whisky Exchange London show. I'm in for a bargain, so when I'm scanning through the pages of the shop I like to have a look for the cheaper end of the stuff. This I picked up for about £34-35 UK. Now I do understand you can get this a bit cheaper in the US, but for us that's pretty average for a good quality bottle of bourbon. But in the States, I think it's as low as $20, maybe even a bit less. There's lots of different versions of this. This is the bottled in bond version, so that's at 50% and 100 proof. We'll go into what bottled in bond means in a moment. But there are other percentages as well. There's like a 40, a 42 and a 45, I think. Different kind of statements on the front, different labels, but they're all relatively cheap. For me, it seemed like a bit of a no-brainer at the time. I've been into bourbon for a couple of years now, so when I get the chance to try something like this for around a good value, to my personal opinion, it seemed like a good thing to snap up. Now let's talk a little bit about what we were talking about, bottled in bond here. Very old Barton, bottled in bond. There's a 6 up here. It used to say 6 years on a previous style, so I'm going to assume this is still 6 years, but it might not be. There's another version of this that just says 100 up there as well. So there's lots of different versions going around. Just make sure you've got the same one as this if you're going to trust this review and pick this up. As you can see from some of the labelling on here, this is US 750 millilitres. This was imported by a certain company to be able to be delivered to me. I wouldn't ordinarily be able to get this. So it's good to be able to have something like this. So bottled in bond. Now originally, I'm going through a very basic overview of this, but originally it was designed because a lot of bourbon that was getting put out, this is like the late 1800s we're talking here, where they would just do whatever they want to it and just stick the label on. This is bourbon, this is straight whiskey. Not so good, people were messing around with it. So they came up with the bottled in bond scheme, act, whatever you want to call it, to really narrow down and get a bit of quality in. Now the rules state that it has to be one distiller, one distillery from one distilling season. A distilling season is January to June and July to December, following the other rules. It also has to be aged in a federally bonded warehouse for a minimum of 4 years, can't be touched by anybody else, and then bottled at 50% or 100 proof. Basically, the long and short of all these little rules is that when you see bottled in bond on a label, and there are relatively few these days that really follow it, but it's just a nice little thing. Because the rest of the rules in bourbon are so stringent nowadays, it's like Scotch, you can't call it Scotch unless it meets certain criteria. Same with bourbon and straight bourbon. It can't be called that unless it meets those requirements. But if you do see bottled in bond, you kind of get the assumption that you're going to get a little bit of extra quality out of it. Before we get into the actual tasting itself, it's worth noting that the mash bill of this is a 75% corn. Obviously, we know bourbon has to be at least 51% corn to be called a bourbon. It's 15% rye and 10% malted barley. So nothing too out of the ordinary here. It's pretty kind of normal, nominal in that kind of standard bourbon-y vibes. Let's see what we've got in the glass, in the British Bourbon Society glass, no less. On the nose then, I would say, for me, it's fairly typical of a kind of standard bourbon-y vibe about it. You know, it's nothing particularly jumping out at me that's different. Lots of vanillas from the American oak, the new American oak. Some toffee, corny kind of smells. Some spices on there as well, cinnamon, that sort of thing. For me, there's nothing too jumpy-outy that differentiates it from the group, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Let's try the palate. I would say, again, a lot of that translates over from the nose. Those kind of vanillas, those toffees, those corns. But on the back end, the rye spice starts to come out. We're getting a bit of mentholy vibes about it, only a touch. More of that cinnamon. And this is where the real oaky, tanniny vibes come out from it as well, right on the back end. Finish is kind of medium, but it's kind of fruity as well. It really hits those toffee and the corn notes right at the back end. Maybe a touch of apple as well. Let's have one more sip. Yeah, personally, for my personal palate where I am right now, for the price I paid for it, I consider this a little bit of a bargain. Really glad I picked this up. It's super nice. I've been kind of going easy on it since I got it, but now that I've reviewed this and this is going to go downstairs in a normal drinking cabinet, this isn't going to last very long. It's not really readily available, especially in the UK, I have to say. As far as I can see, I can't really find it anywhere now. It's pretty much gone. But I'm quite happy to bring this to you, because if you've never heard of these guys before, this very old Barton malarkey, based on this one that I've tried, I would say if you see them, then it's pretty much worth getting. I'd have to say, I don't think that they're like special to keep bottles, even though I can't get hold of them very easily. But I think I would buy another bottle of this, no problem. I'd rather try one of the other from the range and see if I picked out the best one or not. But yeah, generally speaking, I'm very happy with this. And I would say if you see it on a shelf, you can pretty much buy with confidence.